Now it's time to welcome up the first two guests of the evening. Firstly, we want to welcome up the very experienced Rikard Josefson, who has been CEO at multiple Swedish banks, Länsförsäkringar, SEB, and currently at Avanza. We also want to welcome up Tanja Ilic, an SSC alumni who's been at numerous board and CEO positions, such as CEO of Taxi Stockholm, Vice President at Nasdaq, and currently the CCO at Green Iron. Give them a big round of applause. Välkomna. Välkomna. All right, Rikard and Tanja, a warm welcome to Stockholm School of Economics. Are you excited to be here?
Absolutely. I was never admitted because I had 2 poor grades, so it's fun to be here.
And you still remember that. And I was admitted, so I'm... Yeah.
Yes, and Tanja, as mentioned, you're an SSC alumni. Yeah. Does it feel good to be home?
It's great to be back. I never ever thought I would be here on stage, actually. Never ever. And if you had asked the teachers, they would never have guessed either that I would be here. I was, by default, not a very good student. I failed most of my exams, but here I am.
Well, it's great to have you here. Rikard, as mentioned, you have quite an extensive banking experience. Would you start off by telling us a bit about yourself, your different experience in banking and your current position at Avanza?
Well, I started in banking in 1986 at SEB, and then I took my degree at Stockholm University of Stockholm, and then I came back to SEB in 1990, and I stayed until 2011. I did a lot of things, started off in credits, risk, and then more in retail sales and stuff like that. I was the first Swedish person to live in Latvia, in Riga, when SEB bought a bank there, so I lived there for 2 years. And then I went to Länsförsäkringar Bank and became the CEO in 2011. And then I did that for 6 years. We doubled the size of the bank. And then I left for Avanza in 2017, so I've been there for a bit over 5 years now.
Impressive. And how do you think those different experiences in different banks has influenced you in a professional matter?
I think it has influenced me quite a lot. When I left SEB after 25 years, it was a little bit, I was 45, newly divorced, and I think that if you change everything in your life, why don't you change your job? So that was a bit going outside my comfort zone, say, do I work in another context, in another corporate culture? And it's a very big difference between Länsförsäkringar and SEB. And then after 6 years at Länsförsäkringar, Avanza came up, and it's a total different business than traditional banking. And I thought that would be fun to do that. And also, I'm not shy to say that was also becoming the CEO of a stock-listed company. That flavor, I wanted to get that challenge. And it's been a fantastic couple of years. And I'm not that old, so I hopefully have a few years left. So.
Absolutely. And you took a business and economics bachelor, which is the largest bachelor here at SSC. For any students looking to get into a career in banking, what knowledge and skills do you consider to be vital for entering the industry?
I think the subject that I studied for 1 year was actually macroeconomics. And I think that macroeconomics politics is very good to understand if you work in the banking industry, because banking is always a derivative in some sense of the macro environment. So understand society and macroeconomics, that is what I brought with me from my education, to be quite honestly, as the most important thing. Have to analyze things that's going on in society and try to draw conclusions of that, what will happen later. I think that's what I learned the most.
Okay. And Tanja,
Yep.
You're currently the CCO at Green Iron, which is a company that is revolutionizing the usage and recycling of raw materials. But before this role, you have been in numerous industries across a lot of different roles, once again. Could you tell us a bit about your journey and maybe the experience of switching industries? Do you consider it to be difficult?
Well, I will say like Niels van der Poel, you know, the ice skater. Not everyone can do it, but it's doable if you want to invest time. Because if you do change industry, you need to realize that you still work with human beings, which is universal, regardless of industry you choose, and you should follow where you think you want to get the most out of your life. So not as much as the tasks you perform, rather, does this job challenge me today and can I improve tomorrow by doing what I'm doing? So I have been picking my bosses and my colleagues with great sort of thoroughness instead of positions and salaries. So I worked with human beings, and that has been the difference. And many, many weekends spending time learning the new industry. So not just the working hours. So you really need to be curious, I think. That's my most sort of the driving force behind changing industry. It's been, I want to learn more. Can I learn even more and further? I'm not an in-depth person, so I rather learn a lot about many things than be a specialist. So that's where I have found my sort of area, which I think has been good.
And speaking of learning, you're an SSC alumni, as you did your MBA here at SSC. Could you tell us a bit about how you think the education here has influenced your capabilities in the business world?
Yeah. So first of all, the place I come from in Småland, it's like 2,000 people and 6 churches. So when I was there, I was good at sports, and nobody ever told me that Stockholm School of Economics even existed. So the first thing that happened when I was sort of looking at what I was going to do when I grow up was people said, "Oh, but you're good in sports, you should be a sports teacher." So said and done, I studied sports, and then I got into like, oh, but there's more things you can actually study in life. And then eventually I found out you can actually study at Stockholm School of Economics. So that was a long journey for me to end up here. So I had a lot of practical experience, and getting in here, learning the theories behind to back up the stories that I actually had in my role and my career. Because at the time I was already CEO, so I could apply the theory with the practical work in a good sense.
Mm. And several of the industries that you've been working in predominantly has a vast majority of men. As a woman,
yeah.
How has it been to be a CEO or a board member in such industries? Do you have any insights?
Now, it's a funny thing you ask, Adam, because there is differences. I spent a lot of my career in Germany. I don't know if there's any Germans here, but in the German language it's fantastic because they keep still saying Herr und Frau. So you get into a room and you're respected because of your competence and what you actually bring to the table. And they don't really look at you from a gender perspective. Whereas when I came to Sweden, again, investing a lot of money, being a purchaser, one older man said, "Oh, lilla gumman, I'm going to help you." So it's quite interesting that language can also influence that. But my sort of hint of advice is forget about the gender and look at what people actually bring to the table. And then also remember, it's not important to win every battle as long as you win the war.
That's great. Now, both of you has some experience in banking, specifically in the personal savings sector. I was wondering, Rikard, maybe you could start. What is the importance of having some knowledge about your personal savings and managing such?
I think the best thing to do is to start saving yourself. I've been bragging on Twitter actually, because I've been doing monthly savings every time I got a salary since 1986, and I never quit a single month. So it's all about doing it yourself, try to understand it, and also the knowledge about, I don't mean financial freedom, but financial security, because especially these days when we have the economy that we have, I got a journalist calling me the other day, says that, are you not afraid that people will take out money from Avanza to pay their energy bills? And I said, on the opposite, that's what we're there for. You're saving good times to have a buffer in bad times. So it's never been more obvious in society who jumped on the train of buy now, pay later the last couple of years, and who jumped on the train to save, build buffer in your economy. And I think that it's quite obvious what's happening in society right now. So the evidence of the importance of saving has never been stronger than last year and the year we're going to endure this year. But it's all about having an interest. And you don't have to be, into it, but you have to understand that at least I should save in a global index fund or something if you don't want to spend time on it. So we have seen many examples of people have not saved a lot. And so I think it's just start investing yourself, and you learn from your mistakes.
That's interesting. Tanja, do you agree?
I completely agree that saving is good. I think you should have a long-term view on it. And I think you should follow your own sort of inner advice because you're all very knowledgeable here. Trust yourselves in the strategy you have and have a strategy. Think about it. But having said that, don't forget that you should also live. So, saving is good, but do it in a sensible way, long term. And diversify. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, and trust yourself. Have a strategy. That's the main thing, regardless of what it is. If it's like having like I do, I only buy shares that are under 10 kroners, and that is a strategy because I can lose the 10 kroners or whatever I buy. So you have to find what works for you in long term, not short term.
Yes. And as the subject regards money, a lot of people feel unsafe and insecure about listening to others about how to manage their own money. Tanja, how do you think a person can reliably gain knowledge about savings and investments?
Well, it's like with everything. First of all, you have to have an interest. And if you have an interest, you can also draw conclusions. You can read things in newspapers. You can listen to international TV today. There's so much information in there. And then critically look at it. Who's saying what and why? The why. Why does person X say certain things and what's behind it? And not just blindly follow it. And then trust your gut feeling. Do I believe in this or do I think no? And trust it. I think it's very hard to give advice when it comes to financial things. I would prefer if you sort of put 1 + 1 + 1 and then make your own conclusion.
Rikard, what do you think?
Just become an Avanza client, you solve the problem. No, but I think in some sense, if you're not interested, you don't want to spend time, go index, passive products. If you want to spend time, listen to pods, read blogs, try to get information, but as you said, be critical, because there are a lot of people out there who's not talking about things because they have the personal interest in gaining up, especially in social media. Yeah. So I think you have to be critical of who's saying what, but consume a lot of pods and blogs from different perspectives.
Yes. And Rikard, how did you gain this knowledge about savings and investments initially? Was it from school or was it an interest outside? How did it come about?
I think it was from my upbringing, from my mother, who told me, my father was not a very good entrepreneur, but my mother was very stable. She said that when you get your salary, you have to save money, you have to expose it a little bit to risk, you get higher returns. And she always told me, see savings as a cost, in the sense that when you get your salary, you put money away, and that's part of your sort of budget, even though it's not a cost, of course, but view it as a cost. And I started doing that in 1986 when I got my first salary in SEB in June. And I was down during my student years to like 100 crowns a month or something like that. And that's paid off quite well. But I did a lot of mistakes also.
And Tanja, how did you gain such knowledge?
Well, again, if you're from Småland, then you sort of get it with the milk. Sort of everyone talks about it, and you really look at every krona up and down, and then you invest it. So I actually started to be interested when I failed corporate finance because I didn't realize what I was actually failing. So it took me a long time to actually grasp corporate finance. But once I did grasp it, then it triggered an interest in commodities. So I worked with the electricity market, I worked with oil and other commodities, and that's the way I sort of learned an interest and thought, okay, I have to have a strategy. What do I believe in? What do I not believe in? And then I learned and read a lot. And I had a good fortune to work with some of the best investors in London, especially in the commodities market, and also investing in people who is managing the fund and that type of interest that look beyond that. I agree with you, like have a global index fund or whatever, but also look at who's managing it, what's the name behind it, and find out who is that man or woman who is managing the fund actually. That is also a good hint of advice, I think.
Yeah. It's very interesting to hear how you learned about it, because during recent years, we've seen an increase in the interest of investing in stocks, in new things such as NFTs or cryptocurrency. And we've seen especially an increase of interest amongst younger populations, younger people. This can be explained by different reasons. As Rikard said, maybe it's due to social media. It could also be seen as a quick and passive way to make money. Rikard, why do you think this increase has occurred, especially amongst younger people?
One answer is, of course, digitalization and the access to trading. That's an important fact. And I think the cryptocurrency is also a bit voting against the central banks. That's something you don't believe that the system will hold up. I was very negative to crypto up till a few years ago. Then I learned more. I'm not a big fan of it today, but I think it will be here in 10 years down the road. I think it has a role to play, because it's the only asset that is not linked to a physical place or a third-party risk if you hold your own cryptocurrencies. And I think in Sweden especially we have a challenge with this, because we don't live in a country where somebody will just go to the bank and take your money or take your house away from you, that you have seen in some countries. If you had some cryptocurrencies, you'd be quite good. And an interesting note of this is that in 2011 you had the Greece crisis or the Euro crisis. Which country in the world sold most Rolex watches? It was in Greece. Why did all the Greece people buy Rolex watches if they had money? Because you could put it in a bag and go to another country, and the currency of a Rolex watch is global. So that is what people did in 2011. And carrying a lot of watches, it could have been easier to just have a wallet with cryptocurrencies at the moment. So I think it has a role to play.
And what do you think, Tanja?
I follow the social media and a lot of investment advice, because I look at it and I just pray to God, even if I don't a believer, that young people don't go and take SMS loans to invest in shares, because that person who's already posted has already left the position.
Absolutely.
Which is something that you really have to understand. When it comes to cryptocurrency, I've played around a little bit. I think it's interesting, but I like tangible things. So that's my philosophy. I like commodities and metals and minerals, which is also scarce. So you can connect it to that.
But I have the latest figures when I looked at our platform, because we trade 21 crypto certificates. We had something like 75,000 customers invested in this. But I think the average investment was like 4,000 crowns. Yeah. So, and then when you had the GameStop, we had 33,000 clients owning GameStop. Average investment was 3,750 crowns. So even the young people that like these kind of things, very few go all in, which is comforting for me.
Yeah. And that builds upon my next question, because I'm wondering, do you think this upswing in interest amongst younger people, is it positive or is it negative?
I think absolutely positive, because, and the reason for that is that if you look on the bigger picture, in the 70s and 80s, we had a social welfare system, pension system, unemployment system that you basically, to put it easy, you got 90% when you were unemployed, 90% when you're sick, 90% when you're retired. Then we rebuilt the pension system in the beginning of the 90s, and those effects we are seeing now. So I think the younger generation, people like you understand if it's to be, it's up to me, that the state does not take care of us the same way it used to do. And to mitigate that, you need an interest in saving, personal economy, and in investing. And I'm not talking just because I have the job that I have, because I think this trend is a very large trend that's been going on for many, many years, but now it's becoming obvious. When you have Swedish people retiring in Thailand, not because they want to live in Thailand, because that's the only place where they can afford to live a decent life. This is happening as we're speaking.
And Tanja, what do you think?
No, I completely agree. I think that having an interest in your own economy and being in charge of it, I think that's very important. And I also think that my parents and the parents before, where you had the whole welfare system was built up, it's not going to last. We see that in more and more countries. You see that in France, people protesting because they want to increase the retirement age. Plus, we do live longer. Yeah. So that's the also the backflip of it. So I think have an interest, follow your heart, do what you want, save a little money aside that you don't feel, a couple of 100 kroners here and there, and have a long-term view of it. It's going to pay off.
I think, but it's also, I wouldn't say negative effects, because I think you all sitting here studying finances and so forth, you understand this. But savings will be a much larger factor when it comes to segregation in society, what you see today. Because I learned from my mother to save every month. My daughter is 22, she saves every month. But you today have the segregation of society is also becoming a much larger financial segregation, and I don't mean the super rich or the super poor, but the one who just taking care, doing monthly savings, and the one who don't do that. And the role models of some parts, I was out in Skärholmen talking to young people about this, and the sad thing, the only people who came to the lecture was the people who had some interest and wanted to learn, and the people who should have been there didn't show up. So this is not debated a lot, but I think it's a scary thing for society going forward.
And it's also that, you have to remember that Stockholm and the inner city of Stockholm is a society in itself.
Absolutely.
So you have to raise your view and go up and hover a little bit in your sort of helicopter to see how the world looks outside this, because you have to face it, Handelshögskolan, the Stockholm School of Economics, it's like an island on its own, and you have to broaden your views. And I completely agree that people who need to come often don't take the time to come. So you also have a responsibility to share your knowledge and pass it on to people less privileged. Because you have the knowledge, so share it. It's so easy to do that and be sort of generous with knowledge. It doesn't cost anything. And that is how you can pay it forward. So I think that's very important. It's important to me also, coming from where I come from. So I try to take every opportunity to share knowledge and interest and sort of poke people to become the best they can in being generous. A smile and knowledge, it's free of charge. Share it.
That's great. And as Rikard mentioned, we have the fortunate luck to study finance here at SSE, but we're seeing more and more social media moguls, as you mentioned, that post a lot about investments and stocks, and that's at least the most common way of gaining knowledge, in my view, for young people. And people are even offering their guidance in different courses that you can buy online for people that want, quote-unquote, similar success as they have purportedly had. How cautious should someone be to take advice from someone online? And is there any way to know if someone is knowledgeable enough? It's a big question.
If I try to go first here, I think it's extremely hard because you are more in the generation of social media. You should tell us really the opposite, because to me, when I see a post, and I do follow them, I take everything like with a grain of salt and criticize that, because I know that some of these people, they're already left the positions, and another person who might not be as critical goes and invests 2,000 or 3,000 kronor in an advice that is passé. It's past. So I think it's extremely, I would just say, cautious and try to gather information from more than one source.
Absolutely, and always think, why is this person posting this? In what interest is it? Is it mine or yours? Look at a lot of different sources, and I think you said it very well before. You have to have your own philosophy about investing. Just listening to what other people are doing is a very good way of losing a lot of money over a long period of time. Because you have to believe it. I have my boss, Sven Hagströmer, he always tells me that invest in products you like. So if you like something, try to figure out if it's stock listed and then buy it. And that's quite an interesting idea. I did that personally because I'm a hockey fan and I go to New York every year. So I bought shares in Madison Square Garden Entertainment Group, which owns the arena. I'm down 54%, so don't do that. I thought it was a great bet. But at the same time, I'm going to New York in a few weeks and we'll watch the Rangers. And I still think I'm going to feel quite good sitting in the arena and thinking, I own this. Yeah, I own part of this arena. No, but the interesting he said, he told me that in 9 years ago, he bought a Tesla car. And he said, I hate the stock, I love the car. If he had taken the money he bought the Tesla for and bought shares in Tesla, and this is 12 months ago before the down, he could have bought 28 Tesla cars a year ago. So if you like it, buy it.
If you like chocolates, buy chocolate shares.
Yes,
I mean,
absolutely.
I think that's a good philosophy and feel-good philosophy. If you believe in sustainability, invest in sustainability companies, but do not follow the advices on Instagram just because somebody seems cool or has already done a success story. I think that's bad. If you like handbags, invest in a handbag company. If you like shoes, there's a vast majority. I kind of do the same.
But I also think it's a very big difference because a lot of people you see in social media, they're not investors, they're speculators. And speculate is a total different story than investing. And I think you have to understand the difference between these two. And we never talk about speculation. If you look at our company, we communicate the same thing in 1,000 ways. The first saving you should do is a cash buffer. You should have 3 to 5 years view when investing, and you should diversify your savings. That's the only thing we say year after year in a lot of different ways. And we're not saying to speculate.
And that's having said that is that the shares and stocks go up and they go down. It's volatile. So it's not a straight line up to the sky. So if you're up one year, you might be down. But we've lived in an era where it's been going up, up, up. And therefore, a lot of speculators have taken the scene on Instagrams and social media.
But I think the interest is still there because I looked at some statistics now because we released our Q4 figures. We have more clients now that owning equities than we had a year ago before the crash. We have more clients invested in mutual funds. So I would say the interest for saving is absolutely still there. It's just nobody knows what to do. And also some people are consuming part of the saving just to manage the situation they're in with mortgage rates, energy prices and food prices and so forth and so forth.
Now I'm wondering a bit, what is an attractive business to you? How do you determine? You talked about your key subjects. If you love sustainability, go sustainability. And I'm wondering, what are your favorites? Or what do you care about? I'm not asking what you're investing in. I'm wondering, how do you evaluate what's good? What's a good business to invest in?
I would say, from my perspective, is what I look at a lot is customer satisfaction and user experience. If the company really cares about putting a lot of effort in customer satisfaction and user experience, especially in the digital world, there are probably some smart people working there. And I look a lot actually at also, since I know quite a lot of people, who's running the company, who's the CEO, who's on the board, who's making the decision of this company. I could easily invest money in a business that I would maybe not be that attracted to, but I know that this CEO is a great person. That could be a reason for me for investing, because at the end of the day, it's people making decisions.
I look at the people who's behind the company, and then recently I also start to look more and more into sustainability parameters into companies, because I think that is an important and critical factor going forward. Looking at new technologies that comes up, but also looking at the gender. It would be strange if I didn't. How many females are employed? How many entrepreneurs are females? Who's the brain behind it? I think that is important for me, because I do believe that more females should be entrepreneurs, because that is power. If you own the company, you can invest in yourself. And you will hear probably more about that later, because far too few women do believe in themselves, but you should. And therefore also there are capital there that are aiming at female entrepreneurs. So I think that is important to remember. So I, like you, look who's running the company, what's the gender, diversity, and then sustainability.
All right, thank you. And to round this superb panel up, what advice would you give to the SSE students that is curious about saving and investment?
Start investing. If you work in the summers, put a little bit aside to your savings and then have fun. Don't forget to live. That's also important. But I would also say that it might not be investing in things, rather experiences. But start saving a little bit. That is what I would really. Maybe start your company after you finish, you graduate. That's a good investment in yourself.
I would say get going. Yeah. Even if it's very small amounts and you just a few hundred crowns, you learn a lot. So just start saving. And I think you will figure it out for yourself and you find out what you like and what like. Because it's also what you can endure as an investor. Because if you invest a lot of money in a volatile tech company, can I live with myself if I'm 50% down, or will I push the sell button? Or do I still believe in the 5 to 10 year horizon? Then you don't push the sell button. And it's also a bit of it's very psychological that you have to ask yourself, if my portfolio, I want these high risk companies, my portfolio could be down 50% 6 months down the road, what will I do? If the answer is I still believe in the companies, then buy. But because you see that, and we said that on our data, that a lot of people, they cannot take 50% down. So then they just sell because they don't want to see it. It's gone. And if you believe in a company and you made the investment maybe with a 7 to 10 years horizon, don't leave it just after 6 months.
Don't panic.
Don't panic. Don't get divorced immediately.
No.
You have to endure things in your marriage. Because you're already a bit married to the companies you like. And to make that last, it's going to go up and down. And then always fall back in. I think the stock market for the last 100 years, including dividends, is up 8%. And the interest rate, free interest, has been around 3% the last 100 years. So you get 5% better than interest just investing in a global index fund. And you have to believe in that, even though it's not a straight line.
Well, all right. Thank you, Rikard and Tanja, for joining this panel. And thank you for taking the time. We really hope you had as much fun as we had. Please give them a big round of applause. Tack så mycket. Tack så mycket, Rikard.
Thank you. Thank you.
Tack så mycket.